In the rugged expanse of the Central Asian steppes where the wind howled like a forgotten echo and the vastness of the land felt boundless, Sorkhokhtani Beki was born into a world that was both harsh and unforgiving. Her story begins long before the rise of Genghis Khan's empire. In a time when the Mongol tribes were scattered and fragmented, locked in a struggle for survival and supremacy. Her family hailed from the Karyid, one of the many Turkic Mongol tribes who lived in the mountainous region that would later become the heart of the Mongol Empire. The Karyid were known for their warrior culture, their powerful horsemanship, and their relentless pursuit of dominance on the steppes. They were no strangers to conflict, and Sorkhokhtani's upbringing would be shaped by these formative years of constant warfare and shifting allegiances. From a young age, Sorkhokhtani demonstrated a keen intellect and a natural sense of diplomacy. While many girls of her time were relegated to domestic duties, Sorkhokhtani was different. Her father recognized her sharp mind and allowed her to learn the ways of governance and politics, training her to become not just a noblewoman but a key figure in the court of her tribe. It was in this crucible of tribal politics that she would come to understand the complexities of power, alliances, and the delicate balance required to maintain control over an ever-changing landscape. Sorkhokhtani's family, while respected, was not among the most powerful on the steppes. Her strategic marriage would therefore become her pathway to greater influence. The Mongol Empire, at this point in history, was in the midst of its formation under the leadership of a young Genghis Khan, then still known as Temujin, whose rise to power would alter the course of history. Temujin had united the Mongol tribes through sheer force of will, and now he sought alliances with the most powerful families across the steppes. One such alliance was forged through the marriage of Sorkhokhtani to Tolui, Genghis Khan's fourth son. The union was not merely a love match. Though Tolui and Sorkhokhtani would grow to respect each other deeply, it was a marriage arranged with the express purpose of strengthening Genghis Khan's grip on his newly consolidated empire. Tolui, though not as immediately famous as his brothers Jebe or Kublai, was a capable military leader in his own right. He was often entrusted with critical campaigns that pushed the Mongol Empire further into the lands of Central Asia and beyond, making him one of the most important men in Genghis Khan's inner circle. By marrying him, Sorkhokhtani ensured that her family would be intricately woven into the political fabric of the Mongol state. Her marriage to Tolui was a partnership of shared ambition. Sorkhokhtani's role in this partnership was not one of passive subordination. Rather, she quickly became an invaluable advisor to her husband, offering counsel on matters of strategy, diplomacy, and governance. Unlike many other noblewomen of the time who were kept away from the affairs of state, Sorkhokhtani was deeply involved in the decision-making process, both in the camp and at court. Her insight into the shifting alliances and fragile peace between tribes made her a key figure in the Mongol Empire's expansion. Tolui's campaigns across Central Asia and into the Middle East were marked by their speed and efficiency. Under his command, the Mongol army achieved remarkable victories, carving out a vast and seemingly unassailable empire. Yet, it was not just Tolui's military prowess that fueled this success. It was also the support he received from Sorkhokhtani. As Tolui rode off to battle, it was often Sorkhokhtani who held the reins at home, managing the affairs of the empire with a deft hand. She was not just a wife and mother. She was a political force in her own right. Sorkhokhtani understood the value of alliances and the necessity of strategic marriages within the Mongol Empire. She worked tirelessly to ensure that Tolui's line would remain strong and that her children would be well-positioned to carry on the Mongol legacy. Yet, Sorkhokhtani's influence went beyond the boundaries of her own family. Her marriage was not only a political alliance but also a personal one. She and Tolui shared a deep respect for one another, and this mutual respect would become the foundation of a partnership that would shape the destiny of the Mongol Empire. Their relationship would serve as a model for their children, especially for their son Kublai Khan, who would one day rule over a vast and diverse empire. Despite the challenges that came with being a woman in a male-dominated society, Sorkhokhtani proved herself time and time again to be a force to be reckoned with. She understood the complexities of Mongol politics, the nuances of warfare, and the importance of maintaining alliances. She was more than just a silent figure behind her husband. She was his equal, a partner in every sense of the word. But even as Sorkhokhtani and Tolui's partnership flourished, the winds of fate were shifting. Genghis Khan, their mighty leader, was growing older. And the day would soon come when the empire would need to choose a new ruler. This would set the stage for a series of events that would dramatically shape the future of the Mongol Empire and change the course of history forever. Sorkhokhtani, aware of the volatility of Mongol politics, knew that her family's survival and prosperity depended not just on military might, but on strategic diplomacy and careful management of their power base. With this in mind, she began to subtly prepare her children for the challenges ahead, understanding that their futures might one day depend on her decisions. Her early years, marked by her strategic marriage to Tolui and her rising influence in the Mongol Empire, would serve as the foundation for the immense legacy she would leave behind. In the coming years, as Tolui embarked on his campaigns and Genghis Khan's empire continued to expand, Sorkhokhtani would become one of the most influential women in Mongol history. Yet, for all her power and influence, the story of Sorkhokhtani Beki is ultimately one of quiet perseverance and cunning. Her ability to navigate the treacherous waters of Mongol politics, her unwavering loyalty to her husband and children, and her visionary leadership would shape the empire for generations to come. But the greatest challenges were yet to come, and Sorkhokhtani's true test of leadership was just beginning. As Sorkhokhtani Beki grew more accustomed to her role in the Mongol court, she realized the weight of the empire's future rested not only on military success but also on how well the Mongol rulers could balance power within the family and maintain unity among the vast Mongol tribes. Though Genghis Khan's unification of the Mongol people was a monumental achievement, the challenges of governing such an expansive empire were far from over. One of the key factors that allowed the Mongol Empire to continue expanding was the discipline of its military, which Tolui led with unflinching resolve. However, military conquests were only one part of the equation. Sorkhokhtani recognized that the empire's success would hinge on its ability to secure alliances, manage political rivalries, and ensure stability within the family itself. She was not blind to the ambitions of the various Mongol princes, including her own children, and her role as a mother would take on even greater significance as the empire's future began to shift. Tolui, ever the devoted military leader, was frequently away, leading campaigns across the steppes and into distant territories. While he was in the field, Sorkhokhtani was at the heart of the empire, handling the diplomatic and political aspects of Mongol governance. Her ability to communicate with other tribes, manage the Mongol princes, and preserve the unity of the Mongol people proved to be just as important as any victory on the battlefield. Yet, despite her strong influence within the empire, Sorkhokhtani's life would soon be overshadowed by tragedy. Tolui, her beloved husband and partner in power, fell ill during one of his military campaigns, leaving Sorkhokhtani to confront the future of the empire alone. His sudden death would leave an indelible mark on both her and the empire itself. In the wake of Tolui's death, Sorkhokhtani was faced with the daunting task of ensuring that her children remained safe and that their interests were protected. The Mongol Empire, though vast, was fragile, and many saw the death of Tolui as an opportunity to challenge his children's right to rule. Sorkhokhtani, however, was not a woman who would simply step aside. She knew that her children, particularly her son Kublai Khan, had the potential to continue the work that Tolui had started, but only if they were given the right guidance and support. Her most important role during this time was to ensure that the Mongol military remained cohesive. Sorkhokhtani understood that without the loyalty of the warriors who had fought alongside Tolui, the empire could easily splinter. She deftly navigated these political waters, using her diplomatic skills to secure the loyalty of key military leaders. She forged alliances with influential figures in the Mongol Empire, ensuring that her family's position was secure even in the face of potential challenges. Moreover, Sorkhokhtani recognized the importance of keeping the Mongol Empire unified and free from internal strife. She acted as a mediator, calming tensions among the various factions and working tirelessly to ensure that the empire remained strong. At the same time, she knew that her children needed to be prepared for the responsibilities they would one day inherit. She focused particularly on Kublai, who was still a young man, and began to shape him into the leader who would one day conquer China and become one of the greatest emperors in history. As Sorkhokhtani balanced the political needs of the empire She also took on the role of a mother, shaping the moral and ethical compass of her children. Her influence on Kublai would prove to be vital in the years to come, as he would one day be faced with challenges that no Mongol ruler had ever encountered. Yet, it was her quiet strength, wisdom, and resilience that would guide him through the trials ahead. While she may not have been the one to wield the sword on the battlefield, Sorkhokhtani's contributions to the Mongol Empire were no less significant. She was a brilliant strategist in her own right, and it was through her efforts that the empire was able to weather the storm of Tolui's death. Her leadership, both in diplomacy and governance, helped lay the foundation for the Mongol Empire's expansion into China and beyond, securing her place in history as one of the most influential women of the Mongol age. As the empire moved forward, Sorkhokhtani's legacy would continue to be felt through her children. Kublai Khan, who would eventually become the first emperor of the Yuan dynasty in China, owed much of his success to his mother's teachings. Her guidance would steer him through the complexities of ruling over an empire that spanned continents and cultures. And her strategic vision would help him build the foundations for one of the most powerful empires the world had ever known. In the years following Tolui's death, Sorkhokhtani's role as a mother, diplomat, and leader became even more pronounced. She remained deeply involved in the Mongol Empire's politics, managing the affairs of the empire with a steady hand, ensuring the survival of her family's legacy. Her influence would be felt long after her death as her children continued to shape the destiny of the Mongol Empire. Her story is a testament to the power of quiet leadership and the importance of diplomacy, strategy, and vision in an era where the world was shaped by the sword. Sorkhokhtani Beki, though often overlooked in the annals of history, played a pivotal role in the rise of the Mongol Empire and in the shaping of her son Kublai Khan's reign. As we reflect on the legacy of Sorkhokhtani Beki, we see a woman who was not only a wife and mother, but a political mastermind in her own right. Her story reminds us that behind every great leader is often a silent but powerful force, someone whose contributions may go unnoticed in the grand sweep of history, but whose impact is undeniable. The Mongol Empire was forged in fire. Under the leadership of Genghis Khan, it expanded at an unprecedented pace, bringing together a collection of disparate tribes into one of the largest empires the world had ever seen. As the world outside the Mongol steppes began to take notice, it became clear that the empire's future would depend not only on military might but also on the strength of its leadership. Sorkhokhtani Beki, wife of Tolui and daughter-in-law of Genghis Khan, found herself deeply entwined in this meteoric rise. While her husband, Tolui, was often away leading military campaigns, Sorkhokhtani's role in the court of Genghis Khan and within the Mongol Empire's political structure became indispensable. She was not a passive observer in the shaping of the empire's destiny. She was an active participant in its creation. The early years of the Mongol Empire were marked by conquests across the Eurasian steppe, and it was during this time that Sorkhokhtani's strategic brilliance began to shine. While Genghis Khan's name was the one spoken in all across the land, it was clear that his success was also built on the steadfastness of his inner circle, his generals, advisors, and his family. Among them, Sorkhokhtani played a critical role, influencing decisions both within the court and on the battlefield. Her influence was particularly important in the management of her family's holdings. Tolui's position as one of Genghis Khan's most trusted sons meant that Sorkhokhtani had direct access to the highest levels of Mongol leadership. Despite being a woman in a male-dominated society, she was revered for her intellect and her ability to maneuver the complex political landscape of the empire. Sorkhokhtani was not just a political figure, though. She was also a master of diplomacy. As Genghis Khan's empire expanded, he encountered various cultures, kingdoms, and empires that were often resistant to Mongol rule. One of the most vital aspects of Mongol expansion was their ability to manage these diverse peoples and integrate them into the empire. While Genghis Khan himself was focused on the military conquest, Sorkhokhtani worked diligently to maintain peace with neighboring tribes and distant nations. She became known for her ability to build alliances through marriage, negotiation, and shrewd political strategies. During the early campaigns, when Tolui was away, Sorkhokhtani often assumed the role of managing the empire's internal affairs. She used her understanding of the Mongol political system and her connections within the Mongol tribes to ensure that the empire continued to function smoothly. She was well aware that, while Tolui was winning victories in battle, the true strength of the Mongol Empire would lie in its ability to govern its territories effectively. Her efforts were not just limited to diplomacy and governance. Sorkhokhtani also took a direct interest in the cultural and religious landscape of the empire. She supported the Mongol military's strategy of religious tolerance, a policy that would serve the empire well in its expansion into the various kingdoms of Central Asia, Persia, and China. Sorkhokhtani's personal belief in Buddhism along with her respect for other religions helped her to influence the Mongol rulers' policies on religion and governance. As Genghis Khan's empire grew, the challenges of ruling it expanded exponentially. The territories that now fell under Mongol control were vast and diverse, from the plains of Central Asia to the mountains of Persia and the rich cities of China. It became clear that the empire could not be ruled by military conquest alone. The empire's rulers would need to manage resources, control trade routes, and ensure the loyalty of both Mongol and non-Mongol subjects. It was here that Sorkhokhtani's strategic mind proved invaluable. While Tolui led the Mongol military campaigns, Sorkhokhtani's focus was on securing her family's future and maintaining the stability of the empire. She was determined to ensure that her children would have the tools and resources needed to continue the legacy of the Mongols. It was during this period that she began to shape her son Kublai Khan into the leader who would one day rule China. Kublai, though young, was already showing signs of his own brilliance. Sorkhokhtani, recognizing his potential, began to groom him for leadership. She instilled in him the values of Mongol governance, respect for military discipline, the importance of strategic alliances, and the value of intellectual curiosity. While her husband was away, she ensured that Kublai was educated in the ways of the empire, and she encouraged him to learn from the great minds of the time. It was through Sorkhokhtani's guidance that Kublai was able to develop the skills that would later help him govern an empire that stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea. Sorkhokhtani's influence on Kublai's education and character would shape his leadership in profound ways. As Kublai grew older, he would face the daunting task of ruling over a vast and diverse empire. His mother's lessons would help him navigate the complexities of governance and diplomacy. Her guidance would be crucial in Kublai's decision to adopt many aspects of Chinese culture, which would set him apart from his Mongol predecessors and help him build the Yuan dynasty. But even as she focused on her children's futures, Sorkhokhtani never lost sight of her own role in the empire's ongoing expansion. She understood that the Mongols' success was not guaranteed. With every victory came new challenges, new territories to govern, new peoples to manage, and new alliances to secure. And yet, despite the constant pressure, Sorkhokhtani remained calm, always thinking several steps ahead. In these early years, as the Mongol Empire grew, Sorkhokhtani's leadership would come to define not only her family's future but the future of the empire itself. Her ability to maintain stability in such a volatile period made her one of the most influential women of the time. Though she was not a warrior, her strategic brilliance and diplomatic acumen played a crucial role in shaping the empire that would eventually dominate much of Asia. As the Mongol Empire's power spread, so too did the influence of Sorkhokhtani Beki. Her role in the rise of the empire was not only defined by her actions but by the legacy she built for her children, particularly Kublai Khan. With each passing year, the Mongol Empire became more than just a force on the battlefield. It became a powerful political entity, and Sorkhokhtani's influence helped to steer it in a direction that would leave a lasting mark on world history. The Mongol Empire's expansion under Genghis Khan was swift and brutal, but it was not the end of the conquest. The years following the Great Khan's death were marked by his sons and grandsons continuing the work that he had started. Among them, Tolui, the fourth son of Genghis Khan, proved to be one of the most capable military leaders the Mongols had ever known. While Genghis Khan had laid the foundations of an empire, it was Tolui who ensured its survival and growth during the crucial years following his father's death. Tolui's military campaigns in Central Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe were significant, but it was Sorkhokhtani Beki's influence and support that allowed Tolui to focus on the battlefield, knowing that the home front was in capable hands. It was in this period that Sorkhokhtani's true strength as a political leader became evident. While Tolui was away waging war, his wife was leading the internal affairs of the Mongol Empire, keeping the military, political alliances, and domestic matters in perfect order. The Mongol military during this period was an unstoppable force. Under Tolui's leadership, the army marched relentlessly westward, striking fear into the hearts of empires from the Khwarezmian Empire to the Kievan Rus. Tolui was a brilliant strategist who understood the importance of speed, precision, and overwhelming force. He carried the Mongol legacy forward with every battle he won, expanding the empire's borders further and solidifying the Mongols' reputation as the greatest military force the world had ever known. Sorkhokhtani's role in this expansion was not one of direct warfare, but her diplomatic and political influence was invaluable. As Tolui advanced through enemy territories, Sorkhokhtani kept the home front steady. She worked tirelessly behind the scenes to maintain the loyalty of the Mongol princes and generals. She ensured that the Mongol military could operate seamlessly by securing resources, supplies, and alliances. Her role in managing these internal affairs was critical, especially in times of war when Tolui was away for extended periods. While Tolui's military genius was being proven on the front lines, Sorkhokhtani's political acumen was being demonstrated in the empire's capital and beyond. She was a master of managing the diverse peoples who had come under Mongol rule. One of the greatest challenges the Mongols faced as their empire expanded was how to govern a vast and culturally diverse empire. Genghis Khan had been able to maintain unity through his strength, but Sorkhokhtani understood that without careful management, the empire could unravel. Sorkhokhtani's strength lay not only in her diplomatic skills but also in her ability to maintain stability within the Mongol Empire. She had a unique understanding of the complex social and political systems of the conquered lands. Her role in negotiating with local rulers, tribal leaders, and influential figures allowed her to maintain a delicate balance of power that kept the empire from falling into chaos. Her influence on Tolui's decisions was crucial during the height of the Mongol conquests. Tolui, a man of war, had little interest in the intricacies of governance, leaving those matters to his wife. It was Sorkhokhtani who convinced him to adopt policies of religious tolerance and respect for local customs, which greatly benefited the Mongol Empire in its dealings with foreign populations. Her diplomatic and strategic vision allowed the Mongols to assimilate conquered peoples and integrate them into the empire, rather than simply ruling through brute force. As Tolui's military campaigns continued, the Mongols began to carve out an empire that stretched from the heart of Asia to the gates of Europe. Tolui's most significant achievement during this period was his conquest of the Khwarezmian Empire, a powerful state that had once resisted Mongol expansion. After a devastating defeat at the hands of the Khwarezmians, Genghis Khan had vowed to avenge the insult. Now, Tolui led the Mongol forces to total victory, utterly crushing the Khwarezmian Empire and paving the way for Mongol dominance in the region. Despite Tolui's success on the battlefield, Sorkhokhtani's influence remained indispensable. She was the silent architect behind the empire's stability, managing relations with the other Mongol princes and ensuring that the empire's territories remained united. She used her position to strengthen alliances, particularly with the powerful Uyghur and Tanga tribes who played a crucial role in the Mongol military's logistics and support systems. Sorkhokhtani's diplomacy extended to the farthest reaches of the empire. She understood the importance of maintaining peace with the kingdoms that had submitted to Mongol rule, knowing that any unrest or rebellion would weaken the empire's position. Her efforts in managing these relationships ensured that the Mongol Empire would be able to maintain its dominance for years to come. But while Sorkhokhtani was holding the reins of power at home, Tolui's military successes continued to shape the future of the Mongol Empire. The Western campaign, aimed at the Kievan Rus and Eastern Europe, was another example of the Mongols' military prowess. Tolui's forces crushed the resistance and expanded the Mongol Empire into new territories. The fall of the Kievan Rus marked the beginning of Mongol dominance in Eastern Europe, and it was a significant turning point in the empire's expansion. However, despite the successes on the battlefield, Tolui's life was cut short. He died unexpectedly in 1232, leaving Sorkhokhtani to navigate the political landscape of the empire and ensure the survival of her children's legacy. Tolui's death was a blow to the Mongol Empire. But Sorkhokhtani's steady leadership ensured that the empire would not falter. She quickly moved to solidify her son Kublai Khan's position, preparing him for the challenges that lay ahead. While Tolui's military victories had secured the Mongol Empire's dominance on the battlefield, Sorkhokhtani's political and diplomatic genius ensured the empire's survival in the face of uncertain times. Her influence over Tolui and her children would prove crucial as the Mongol Empire moved into a new era. With Tolui's passing, the leadership of the empire passed to a new generation, one that would carry the Mongol legacy forward. Sorkhokhtani Beki's influence was not just in her husband's lifetime but in the long-lasting impact she had on the Mongol Empire. Through her strategic mind, her diplomatic skill, and her ability to lead when necessary, she ensured that the Mongols remained a dominant force in the world. Her legacy lived on through her children, particularly her son Kublai, who would one day become the Emperor of China. The sudden death of Tolui in 1232 was a moment of profound sorrow for the Mongol Empire. Tolui, the son of Genghis Khan, had been one of the most capable and strategic leaders the empire had known, and his unexpected passing left a void that threatened the stability of the vast Mongol territories. For Sorkhokhtani Beki, this loss was not just personal. It was a political crisis that demanded all of her wisdom, strength, and diplomatic skill. Tolui had been the man who held the empire's military might together after Genghis Khan's death. With his leadership, the Mongols had secured remarkable victories in Central Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. He had led campaigns with brutal efficiency, expanding the Mongol influence across a vast stretch of land. His leadership, tempered with strategic brilliance, had cemented his reputation as a military mastermind. But now, with Tolui gone, Sorkhokhtani found herself at the helm of an empire in flux. While the Mongol Empire was vast and seemingly invincible, it was also fragile, held together not only by military power but by the alliances and political maneuvers that Sorkhokhtani had helped cultivate over the years. The death of Tolui meant that the family's political and military cohesion would be tested like never before. Sorkhokhtani understood that the survival of her family's legacy and the stability of the empire depended on how well she could manage the transition in leadership. The Mongol aristocracy was fiercely loyal to their bloodlines, but the many sons and grandsons of Genghis Khan harbored their own ambitions. Tolui's passing opened the door for potential conflict, as other branches of the family could now vie for control. However, Sorkhokhtani was not one to shy away from such challenges. She knew that, despite the political uncertainties, the Mongol Empire could not afford a power vacuum. The empire had grown too large, and its enemies were too numerous for the Mongols to fracture. With a steady hand, Sorkhokhtani quickly moved to consolidate her position and protect her children, particularly her son Kublai Khan, who had been groomed for leadership under her careful guidance. Sorkhokhtani's first task was to ensure that the military remained loyal to the family. Tolui had been one of the empire's most revered generals, and his death could have sent shockwaves through the Mongol army. However, Sorkhokhtani's deft political maneuvering ensured that the military leaders remained loyal to her family. She worked closely with the generals who had fought beside Tolui, earning their trust by honoring Tolui's memory while also demonstrating her own ability to govern. The generals, recognizing Sorkhokhtani's intelligence and leadership, pledged their support to her and to Kublai. Her political alliances, which she had carefully cultivated over the years, played a crucial role in maintaining order within the empire. She had built strong ties with key factions within the Mongol Empire, and these relationships proved essential as she navigated the turbulent waters following Tolui's death. But while the military remained largely loyal, there were those within the family who saw Tolui's death as an opportunity to seize power. The Mongol princes were ambitious, and each had their own vision for the future of the empire. Sorkhokhtani knew that she would have to act quickly and decisively to keep these rivalries from tearing the empire apart. In the wake of Tolui's death, Sorkhokhtani took on the role of regent for her children, ensuring that they were protected from the political machinations of their cousins and uncles. She was particularly focused on Kublai, her second son, whom she saw as the future of the Mongol Empire. Kublai was still young, but he had shown great promise in his studies and military training. Sorkhokhtani knew that, despite the political challenges, Kublai had the potential to carry on the Mongol legacy and perhaps even surpass his predecessors. Her influence over Kublai was pivotal during this critical time. She had already instilled in him the principles of governance and military strategy, but now she focused on preparing him for the political intricacies of ruling an empire. Sorkhokhtani's guidance would help Kublai become a leader who would one day conquer China and establish the Yuan dynasty, but the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. Sorkhokhtani's strength as a leader lay in her ability to balance diplomacy with decisive action. While the Mongol princes were plotting and jockeying for power, Sorkhokhtani quietly worked behind the scenes, weaving a network of alliances and securing the future of her children. Her efforts were not just about maintaining control over the Mongol Empire. They were about ensuring that the Mongols would continue to thrive long after her death. Despite her unparalleled influence within the Mongol court, Sorkhokhtani knew that her time was limited. She would not be able to rule the empire forever, and the question of succession loomed large. The death of Tolui had not only left a power vacuum within the Mongol military but also within the royal family itself. However, Sorkhokhtani had already made sure that her children, particularly Kublai, were positioned to succeed. Her leadership during this period would ultimately solidify her place in history as one of the most powerful women in the Mongol Empire. Though her role was not one of public grandeur, her actions during this crucial time were vital in ensuring the empire's survival. She managed to hold the empire together while navigating the shifting alliances of the royal family, earning the respect of both her allies and her enemies. In the years following Tolui's death, Sorkhokhtani's influence would only grow stronger. While Kublai's rise to power was inevitable, it was Sorkhokhtani's wisdom, foresight, and political acumen that allowed him to reach the heights he did. She would guide him through the challenges of Mongol politics and lay the foundation for his future success. As the Mongol Empire continued to expand and evolve, the influence of Sorkhokhtani Beki would remain felt across the lands. Her ability to hold the empire together in the wake of Tolui's death not only preserved the Mongol legacy but also set the stage for the next chapter in the empire's history. As Sorkhokhtani Beki navigated the complex political environment following the death of her husband, Tolui, the focus of her attention shifted to her children, especially her second son, Kublai. While the Mongol Empire had flourished under Genghis Khan's leadership and had been further expanded under Tolui's military genius, the future of the empire now rested on the shoulders of the next generation. Sorkhokhtani knew that, despite the turbulent times, her son Kublai was destined for greatness, but only if he was properly prepared for the challenges ahead. Kublai Khan, born in 1215, was only a young man when his father died. And though he had been trained in the ways of war, his future was far from certain. The Mongol court was filled with ambitious princes, each eager to claim their own power. And Kublai faced significant opposition from members of his own family who felt they were more suited to rule, while the military leaders and tribal chiefs remained loyal to the Mongol dynasty. The internal politics of the family were far from stable, and Sorkhokhtani understood that the path to the throne would not be an easy one for her son. Yet Sorkhokhtani had been preparing for this moment for years. She had watched Kublai grow and had shaped him into the leader he would eventually become. Her influence on his education was profound. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Kublai was encouraged by his mother to adopt a broader worldview, one that went beyond the traditional Mongol way of life. While Genghis Khan and Tolui had emphasized military conquests and Mongol traditions, Sorkhokhtani understood the importance of governance and the necessity of integrating various cultures into the Mongol system. Her vision was that the Mongol Empire, in order to endure, would need to embrace the diversity of the lands it had conquered. Kublai, who would one day rule over a vast empire that stretched from the steppes of Mongolia to the borders of China, was taught to appreciate the value of diplomacy, culture, and, above all, effective governance. It was Sorkhokhtani who encouraged Kublai to study Chinese culture and Confucian philosophy, laying the groundwork for his eventual decision to adopt many elements of Chinese governance once he became emperor. Her influence was key in shaping Kublai's vision of the empire, not just as a military power but as a unified political entity that could successfully rule over the diverse people who had fallen under Mongol control. As Kublai grew older, Sorkhokhtani's guidance became even more vital. She understood that leadership in the Mongol Empire required more than just military skill. It required a deep understanding of governance, economic management, and the ability to navigate complex political landscapes. Kublai's natural aptitude for leadership was evident, but it was his mother's instruction that gave him the tools to succeed in the highly competitive and often cutthroat Mongol court. Sorkhokhtani's influence on Kublai went beyond education. It extended to the very way he viewed the world. She taught him the importance of alliances and the need to navigate the intricate web of relationships between the Mongol royal family, the military leaders, and the diverse populations under Mongol rule. She knew that Kublai's ability to secure the loyalty of the Mongol princes and generals would be essential if he was to rise to power. Sorkhokhtani also instilled in Kublai the importance of diplomacy. She was keenly aware that the Mongol Empire could not be maintained through military conquest alone. While Tolui had focused on expanding the empire's borders through force, Sorkhokhtani believed that long-term stability could only be achieved through the careful management of relationships with other rulers, both within and outside the empire. She taught Kublai the value of cultivating these relationships, of knowing when to negotiate and when to fight. Under her guidance, Kublai became more than just a military leader. He became a statesman. Sorkhokhtani prepared him for the difficult task of governing a vast empire with varying customs, religions, and peoples. She understood that Kublai's future success would not be determined by his ability to conquer, but by his ability to govern and unite the people of the Mongol Empire. Her lessons on governance would serve him well in the years to come, particularly as he sought to build a lasting empire in China. Kublai's rise to power was not without its challenges. After the death of Tolui, the Mongol Empire was divided among the sons and grandsons of Genghis Khan, each vying for control. Kublai's primary rival was his older brother, Jib, who had initially been seen as the more likely candidate for leadership. But Sorkhokhtani's political skill and her ability to rally support for her son proved to be decisive. Through a combination of strategic marriages, political alliances, and military support, Sorkhokhtani ensured that Kublai's path to the throne was secured. Sorkhokhtani's influence in the court was unparalleled. She acted as a mediator between the various factions within the Mongol family, using her wisdom and experience to prevent internal strife from escalating into civil war. Her role as a mother, diplomat, and advisor allowed her to navigate the complex political dynamics of the Mongol Empire and secure the future of her children. While Kublai was rising to power, Sorkhokhtani was quietly working behind the scenes to ensure that his reign would be a successful one. She continued to guide him, providing him with the knowledge and political savvy he would need to rule effectively. She emphasized the importance of maintaining Mongol traditions while also embracing the customs and governance systems of the conquered lands, particularly China. It was under her influence that Kublai would eventually make the decision to establish the Yuan dynasty, marking the beginning of a new era in Chinese history. Sorkhokhtani's role in Kublai's rise to power cannot be overstated. Her leadership, both within the Mongol Empire and within her family, ensured that the empire remained stable during a period of uncertainty. She acted as the bedrock upon which Kublai would build his future, and it was her wisdom and guidance that helped him navigate the complexities of ruling an empire that spanned 2 continents. Her influence on Kublai was not only about military strategy but also about how to be a compassionate and visionary ruler who could bring together a diverse array of peoples and cultures under one banner. In the years that followed, Kublai would rise to become the great Khan of the Mongol Empire, ruling over one of the largest and most powerful empires the world had ever seen. But none of this would have been possible without the steadfast guidance and support of his mother, Sorkhokhtani Beki. Her vision for the future of the Mongol Empire and for her son's place in that future laid the groundwork for the success that Kublai would achieve in the years to come. Sorkhokhtani's influence, though often behind the scenes, was undeniable. She had not only shaped the man who would become Kublai Khan, but she had also ensured the Mongol Empire's survival and future success. Her legacy, though not often celebrated in the annals of history, was one that would live on through the deeds of her son and the empire he would rule. Sorkhokhtani Beki's life was defined by political maneuvering, strategic alliances, and an unwavering commitment to the Mongol Empire's stability and success. While she was undoubtedly an influential figure within her family, Her true power came from her understanding of Mongol politics and her ability to influence decisions at the highest levels of government. It was not simply her intelligence or her ability to manage her household that made her stand out, it was her unparalleled ability to navigate the complex web of relationships that governed the Mongol Empire. Her role as the wife of Tolui, and mother to Kublai and his brothers, placed her in a unique position within the Mongol aristocracy. But her influence stretched far beyond the confines of the royal court. She had forged lasting relationships with many of the most powerful leaders within the empire. And these relationships would prove essential during the most trying times of her life. When Tolui passed away in 1232, Sorkhokhtani found herself in a precarious situation. While she had already proven herself as a capable leader, the death of her husband opened the door for internal power struggles within the Mongol Empire. The Mongol princes, hungry for power, were eager to seize control. But Sorkhokhtani was not a woman who could be easily overlooked. Her political acumen and understanding of the Mongol system enabled her to secure a position of immense power during this critical time. Sorkhokhtani's first move was to consolidate her power and ensure that her children were positioned to succeed. She worked tirelessly to maintain the loyalty of the military generals who had fought beside Tolui, ensuring that they remained loyal to the family. The Mongol generals, who had been won over by Tolui's leadership, were now faced with the question of who would lead the empire. It was Sorkhokhtani's diplomacy that kept the military united, and her influence ensured that her children would not be overshadowed by rival claimants to the throne. While Kublai was still young, Sorkhokhtani knew that his future depended not only on military success but on the ability to build and maintain alliances. She understood that the strength of the Mongol Empire did not only lie in the size of its army but in the cohesion between its ruling families and military leaders. Her diplomatic strategies ensured that the Mongol court remained united during the tumultuous years following Tolui's death. One of Sorkhokhtani's most significant political achievements was her ability to maintain stability between the various Mongol factions. She was a key mediator between the different branches of the family, ensuring that rivalries did not escalate into open conflict. This ability to navigate the internal power struggles within the Mongol Empire was critical to the empire's survival. And it was through her efforts that the family was able to hold on to power in the wake of Tolui's death. But Sorkhokhtani's influence extended beyond the family. She also worked tirelessly to ensure that the Mongol Empire maintained strong relationships with its neighboring empires and kingdoms. She understood that, in order to ensure the continued prosperity of the Mongols, they needed to foster good relations with both their allies and their enemies. One of her key diplomatic successes was her ability to forge alliances with the powerful Uyghur and Tangut tribes. These tribes were crucial to the Mongol military's logistics and support systems, and maintaining their loyalty was essential for the Mongol Empire's long-term stability. Sorkhokhtani was able to build these alliances by emphasizing shared interests and fostering a sense of unity among the Mongol tribes. Her ability to secure these alliances would help the Mongols maintain control over their vast territories and expand their influence across Asia. At the same time, Sorkhokhtani was also a key figure in managing the relationships between the Mongols and the various kingdoms they had conquered. She was instrumental in ensuring that the Mongols maintained their reputation for religious tolerance, a policy that would serve them well as they expanded into regions with diverse religious traditions. Her ability to navigate the complex religious and cultural landscapes of the Mongol Empire was critical in ensuring that the empire did not face widespread rebellion or unrest. But perhaps the most significant aspect of Sorkhokhtani's political influence was her role in shaping the future of the Mongol Empire through her son, Kublai Khan. She understood that, while the military was important, the future of the empire would depend on the ability to govern effectively and integrate the diverse peoples within the empire. It was under her guidance that Kublai began to embrace a broader vision of governance, one that would lead to his eventual decision to establish the Yuan dynasty in China. Sorkhokhtani's political influence was also evident in her interactions with other rulers and states outside the Mongol Empire. She was a skilled diplomat who understood the importance of maintaining peaceful relations with the neighboring powers. She forged alliances with the Islamic states of Central Asia, using her diplomatic prowess to ensure that the Mongols were seen as a powerful but reasonable force. Her ability to manage relations with other powers helped to secure the Mongol Empire's position on the world stage. In addition to her diplomatic efforts, Sorkhokhtani was also instrumental in shaping the policies of the Mongol Empire. She understood that, in order to maintain control over such a vast and diverse territory, the Mongols would need to adopt policies that took into account the needs and desires of the people they ruled. Under her influence, the Mongols developed policies of tolerance and respect for local customs which helped to prevent widespread resistance to Mongol rule. Her efforts in this regard were key to the Mongols' success in governing the lands they had conquered. Sorkhokhtani's political influence was also marked by her ability to balance tradition with innovation. While she was deeply committed to the Mongol way of life, she also understood the importance of adapting to the changing world. Her son, Kublai, would one day embrace Chinese culture and governance. But it was Sorkhokhtani's teachings that laid the foundation for this transformation. She had always believed that the Mongol Empire needed to be more than just a military force. It needed to be a united, functioning state that could rule over the diverse peoples it had conquered. Through her guidance, Kublai would become a ruler who could bring together the Mongol and Chinese traditions, ultimately founding the Yuan dynasty. As the years passed, Sorkhokhtani's influence continued to shape the Mongol Empire. Her political acumen, her ability to maintain stability, and her skillful diplomacy were crucial in ensuring that the empire remained strong and united. But perhaps her greatest legacy was her ability to prepare her son Kublai for the challenges that lay ahead. Her lessons on governance, diplomacy, and cultural integration would serve him well as he moved toward his own ascension to power. Sorkhokhtani Beki's political influence was not limited to her time as regent. Her role in shaping the policies and future of the Mongol Empire, particularly through her son, Kublai Khan, would have a lasting impact on the world. Her legacy as a diplomat, a stateswoman, and a mother would echo throughout history, securing her place as one of the most important figures in the Mongol Empire's rise and the success of the Yuan dynasty. In the early years of the Mongol Empire, the balance of power within the royal family was a delicate and often volatile matter. Genghis Khan had established a vast empire that spanned from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea, and the responsibility of maintaining that empire fell to his sons and grandsons. However, the Mongol rulers were not alone in their struggle for power. The empire was full of ambitious princes and warlords, each eager to carve out their own piece of the empire's vast territories. After the death of Tolui, Sorkhokhtani Beki found herself in the midst of this political turbulence. While her position as the mother of Kublai Khan gave her a certain degree of influence, she still had to contend with rival claimants to power from within her own family. The Mongol court was filled with ambitious leaders, including Jeeb's brothers, and other relatives of Genghis Khan, each seeking to strengthen their hold over the empire. The competition was fierce, and Sorkhokhtani knew that maintaining the loyalty of the key players within the Mongol family would be crucial to her own children's future. One of the greatest challenges that Sorkhokhtani faced during this period was navigating the shifting alliances and rivalries within the royal family. The Mongol princes were not always united in their goals, and the ambition of each son of Genghis Khan could sometimes undermine the stability of the entire empire. As a result, Sorkhokhtani found herself in the difficult position of managing these rivalries, all while ensuring that her children's interests were protected. Despite these challenges, Sorkhokhtani was able to maintain a position of power and influence within the Mongol court. Her political acumen, diplomacy, and understanding of Mongol traditions enabled her to navigate the internal politics of the empire with remarkable skill. She forged alliances with several key leaders within the Mongol family, ensuring that Kublai's claim to the throne was secure. By maintaining relationships with powerful figures such as Jeeb, Shigi, and other influential generals, she was able to hold her ground in the face of opposition and guarantee the safety of her family. Her ability to build these alliances was rooted in her understanding of Mongol culture and politics. Mongol society was built on a complex system of alliances, and Sorkhokhtani knew how to use marriage and diplomacy as tools to cement her power. By marrying off her daughters to key Mongol leaders, she ensured that her family's influence would extend across the empire. These marriages were not simply political maneuvers. They were a way of solidifying her family's relationships with the most powerful generals and rulers within the empire. Sorkhokhtani was also deeply involved in managing the relationship between the Mongol family and the various tribal leaders who had allied themselves with Genghis Khan. Many of the Mongol tribes had been brought together through force, but maintaining their loyalty required constant attention and care. Sorkhokhtani understood that the loyalty of these tribes was essential to the stability of the empire, and she worked tirelessly to keep them aligned with the Mongol rulers. In her dealings with other Mongol leaders, Sorkhokhtani often acted as a mediator, smoothing over disputes and ensuring that the interests of her children were protected. Her diplomatic skills allowed her to maintain stability within the royal family, preventing internal strife from escalating into civil war. She understood that, while the Mongol army was powerful, it was the alliances between the family and the tribes that ensured the empire's survival. One of the most significant challenges that Sorkhokhtani faced was managing the complex relationship between her son, Kublai, and his brothers. While Kublai was her favored son, the other sons of Tolui were also vying for power. The Mongol Empire was not a democracy, and succession was determined by strength, political maneuvering, and the loyalty of key leaders. Sorkhokhtani worked hard to ensure that Kublai's rise to power would be smooth, but it was clear that the competition among the Mongol princes was intense. Despite these tensions, Sorkhokhtani was able to maintain her position as a powerful figure within the court. Her influence over Kublai, in particular, was immense. She guided him through the political intricacies of Mongol rule, ensuring that he would be prepared to take on the mantle of leadership when the time came. While Kublai was still young, Sorkhokhtani's efforts were shaping him into the ruler who would eventually conquer China and establish the Yuan dynasty. As the rivalry between the Mongol princes grew, Sorkhokhtani's position within the court became even more critical. She was not only the mother of Kublai Khan, she was a key player in the internal politics of the Mongol Empire. Her ability to manage relationships within the royal family and with the military leaders allowed her to protect her family's interests and ensure that Kublai's path to the throne was secure. Sorkhokhtani's political savvy was evident in her interactions with other Mongol rulers outside of her family. She was instrumental in maintaining peace with the neighboring empires and tribes, ensuring that the Mongol Empire's relationships with these powers remained stable. Her ability to negotiate with other rulers, including the powerful kingdoms of Persia and the Khwarezmian Empire, was crucial in ensuring that the Mongols were able to expand their influence without overextending themselves. Her role as a diplomat was not only about forging alliances. It was about maintaining the delicate balance of power that allowed the Mongol Empire to thrive. Sorkhokhtani understood that the empire's strength lay not just in military conquests, but in its ability to maintain peace and order within its borders. By building relationships with other rulers, she ensured that the Mongol Empire would be able to weather the storms of external threats and internal strife. As the years passed and Kublai grew older, Sorkhokhtani's influence only increased. She continued to play a key role in the decisions that shaped the future of the Mongol Empire, using her political acumen to guide her son through the challenges that lay ahead. Her relationships with other Mongol leaders, both inside and outside the family, would prove essential in securing Kublai's future and establishing the Yuan dynasty. Sorkhokhtani Beki's relationships with other Mongol leaders were not only a testament to her political skill, they were also a reflection of her deep understanding of the Mongol way of life. She knew that the empire's strength lay not just in its military power, but in its ability to unite disparate tribes, cultures, and peoples under one banner. Through her diplomacy, alliances, and guidance of Kublai, Sorkhokhtani played a central role in shaping the future of the Mongol Empire. The Mongol Empire, vast and far-reaching, demanded constant vigilance and the ability to adapt to ever-changing circumstances. In the years following Tolui's death, as the political landscape shifted and the empire's future seemed uncertain, Sorkhokhtani Beki found herself at the helm of an empire that was teetering on the edge of instability. While her children, especially Kublai, were being groomed for leadership, the challenges facing the empire were enormous. Kublai, though a promising leader, was still young and had yet to prove his mettle. It was during this time that Sorkhokhtani's wisdom and political acumen became even more critical. Tolui's death had left a significant vacuum in leadership, and Sorkhokhtani knew that the Mongol Empire could not afford to let this void linger. With her husband gone, the responsibility for maintaining the empire's stability fell largely on her shoulders. While the Mongol military was powerful and its generals loyal, the empire was not simply a collection of warriors. It was a complex political and administrative structure that required careful management. As Tolui's widow, Sorkhokhtani held a special place in Mongol society. Her marriage had united powerful Mongol tribes, and her status as the mother of Kublai Khan gave her significant influence within the court. However, the political situation in the Mongol Empire was volatile. Many of the Mongol princes and military leaders were still vying for power, and Sorkhokhtani knew that if she did not act swiftly, the empire could fracture. Kublai, although a capable and intelligent young man, was not yet ready to take the reins of the empire. He was still in the process of learning the intricacies of governance and diplomacy, and his leadership was not guaranteed. Sorkhokhtani understood that her son would need time and guidance to develop into the leader the empire required, and that time was something she could not afford to waste. During this critical period, she took it upon herself to manage the internal affairs of the empire and prepare Kublai for the challenges ahead. While Kublai remained in the background, focusing on his education and learning from his mother, Sorkhokhtani worked tirelessly to maintain order. She knew that the Mongol Empire's strength lay not just in military conquests but in its ability to govern the vast and diverse territories it had amassed. With Tolui's death, the empire was at risk of falling into internal disarray. The rivalries among the Mongol princes, along with the ever-present threat of rebellion from conquered peoples, made it crucial that Sorkhokhtani maintain control over the empire's affairs. Her first challenge was managing the relationships between the various Mongol factions. The empire was divided into regions governed by different family members, each with their own military forces and power base. The Mongol princes, while loyal to Genghis Khan's vision, were also fiercely independent, and their loyalty to each other was often tenuous at best. In these years, Sorkhokhtani acted as the glue that held the empire together. She ensured that the rivalries between her children's uncles and cousins did not escalate into open conflict, and she used her diplomatic skills to navigate the complexities of Mongol politics. One of the key factors in her ability to maintain control was her careful management of alliances. She knew that, in the Mongol world, alliances were everything. With the military generals, tribal chiefs, and royal family members, Sorkhokhtani secured the loyalty of the empire's most important figures. Through a combination of strategic marriages, economic incentives, and political maneuvering, she ensured that her children, especially Kublai, would not be sidelined by rivals. Kublai's eventual rise to power was shaped by Sorkhokhtani's leadership during these crucial years. She was keenly aware of the challenges that would come when Kublai was old enough to claim the throne, and she took great care in preparing him for the difficult task ahead. Sorkhokhtani knew that, to be a successful ruler, Kublai would need to understand not only military strategy but also governance, diplomacy, and the management of diverse cultures. While Sorkhokhtani was preparing Kublai for leadership, she also worked to preserve the Mongol Empire's unity and prosperity. The empire had already stretched from the heart of Asia to the gates of Europe, and its influence was felt across the known world. However, as the empire grew, it became increasingly difficult to manage. The challenges facing the Mongol rulers were no longer just external, they were internal as well. How could the empire, now vast and diverse, maintain its unity? How could the Mongol rulers balance the needs and desires of different peoples, religions, and cultures while keeping the military strong? Sorkhokhtani's solution was to continue the policy of tolerance and inclusion that had been established by Genghis Khan. She understood that the Mongol Empire was not a monolithic entity. It was a vast mosaic of cultures, religions, and peoples. To rule effectively, the Mongols needed to respect the diversity of the empire and maintain open lines of communication with the various tribes and kingdoms they had conquered. She encouraged Kublai to embrace the best aspects of Mongol and Chinese culture, understanding that this synthesis would be key to his future success. During Kublai's absence from the political stage, Sorkhokhtani's influence was unmatched. She was not only a mother guiding her son's destiny but also a ruler in her own right. Her ability to maintain the stability of the empire, while preparing the next generation of leadership, was a testament to her strength and vision. Kublai, watching from the sidelines, could not help but admire the way his mother handled the complexities of Mongol politics. As he grew older, he began to appreciate the depth of her wisdom and the strength it took to hold an empire together during such uncertain times. Sorkhokhtani, aware of the challenges Kublai would face, continued to guide him in the art of governance, preparing him for the day when he would take the reins of the empire. When Kublai finally took power, it was not just through military conquest but through the careful diplomacy and wise governance that his mother had instilled in him. Her influence would shape his rule for years to come, and the legacy she left behind would be felt not only in the Mongol Empire but in the way the world viewed the Mongols. Sorkhokhtani Beki's leadership during Kublai's absence was more than just a temporary measure. It was a testament to her unparalleled skill in governance and her unwavering dedication to the Mongol Empire's success. Her actions ensured that Kublai would be able to claim the throne when the time came, and her legacy would be one of strength, wisdom, and political brilliance. The Mongol Empire, while often remembered for its military conquests and fearsome warriors, was also a vast and culturally rich empire. Spanning multiple continents, it encompassed a multitude of different peoples, languages, religions, and customs. The success of the Mongols in maintaining such a sprawling empire was not just due to their military might. It was also rooted in their ability to govern diverse populations and integrate various cultures and belief systems into their administration. Much of this was due to the forward-thinking policies implemented by key figures like Sorkhokhtani Beki, whose influence extended beyond military and political spheres into the very heart of Mongol society and culture. Sorkhokhtani was not only a leader in her own right but also a woman with a deep understanding of the role culture and religion played in governance. While Genghis Khan had been a pragmatic ruler who sought to unify his empire through law, military conquest, and religious tolerance, Sorkhokhtani took these principles even further. She understood that a successful empire could not just be held together by force, it had to be culturally cohesive, allowing for diverse traditions to thrive within the context of Mongol rule. As a devout follower of Buddhism, Sorkhokhtani believed in the importance of spiritual and cultural integration. Although the Mongol Empire was founded on the military prowess of Genghis Khan and his successors, and although the Mongols were traditionally shamanistic, Sorkhokhtani saw the value in embracing a variety of religions. Her own devotion to Buddhism shaped her policies, making her one of the key figures in fostering a tolerant and inclusive religious environment within the empire. Under her influence, the Mongol Empire became a beacon of religious tolerance. While shamanism remained the dominant belief system among the Mongol elite, Sorkhokhtani actively encouraged the practice of Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity. Her court was home to scholars and religious leaders from all corners of the known world, from Buddhist monks from Tibet to Nestorian Christian priests and Muslim scholars from Persia. By inviting these figures into her court and giving them the freedom to practice their faith, Sorkhokhtani helped create a cultural melting pot that fostered intellectual exchange and spiritual harmony. Sorkhokhtani's support for Buddhism, in particular, had a lasting impact on the Mongol Empire. During the reign of her son Kublai Khan, Buddhism would become one of the dominant religions of the Yuan dynasty. This was not just a religious shift. It marked a transformation in Mongol governance, as Kublai adopted many of the Buddhist principles Sorkhokhtani had championed. Buddhist ideas about compassion, moral governance, and governance of the people influenced the way Kublai ruled and his policies toward the subjects of the empire. This deep connection to Buddhism would shape the future of Chinese politics and culture in profound ways. Beyond religious tolerance, Sorkhokhtani also recognized the importance of education and intellectual exchange. While the Mongols were often seen as warriors, they were also keen to incorporate knowledge from the cultures they encountered. Sorkhokhtani was instrumental in establishing educational and cultural centers throughout the empire, where scholars could come together and share ideas, philosophy, and scientific knowledge. These centers attracted scholars and intellectuals from across Asia, Europe, and the Middle East, making the Mongol Empire a global hub for the exchange of knowledge. Sorkhokhtani's influence on culture also extended to the arts. She was a patron of the arts, supporting musicians, artists, and poets who brought new cultural expressions into the empire. Her court became a center for intellectual and artistic activity where Mongol traditions fused with those of China, Persia, and the Islamic world. The arts flourished during her time as regent, and the cultural blending that occurred under her guidance had a lasting impact on the art, music, and literature of the Mongol Empire. Her influence was also felt in the areas of science and technology. The Mongol Empire was a vast network that connected the East with the West, and Sorkhokhtani was instrumental in fostering the exchange of technological innovations. She encouraged the importation of knowledge from Persia, China, and the Islamic world, facilitating the spread of scientific advancements such as astronomy, medicine, and engineering. These advancements not only benefited the Mongol Empire but also played a key role in the development of the societies it came into contact with. One of the most significant aspects of Sorkhokhtani's cultural influence was her vision for the future of the empire. She knew that the Mongols' success would not just be determined by their ability to conquer and maintain military supremacy. To create a lasting legacy, the Mongol rulers needed to establish a culture of learning, tolerance, and cultural exchange. Her guidance and patronage in these areas laid the foundation for a more sophisticated and inclusive Mongol Empire, one that would continue to thrive long after her death. Despite her considerable influence, Sorkhokhtani's contributions to Mongol society and culture were often overshadowed by the more visible military successes of her husband, Tolui, and her son, Kublai. Yet, her role in shaping the intellectual and cultural landscape of the empire cannot be overstated. Without her vision for a multicultural and tolerant empire, the Mongol world would not have been able to foster the kind of cultural flourishing that characterized the Yuan dynasty under Kublai Khan. Sorkhokhtani's legacy lived on through the policies she championed, particularly in regard to religious tolerance, intellectual exchange, and cultural integration. Her support for Buddhism and other religions laid the groundwork for the religious policies of the Yuan dynasty. Her promotion of education and the arts created a legacy of intellectual growth that would shape the future of the Mongol Empire and beyond. Kublai Khan, deeply influenced by his mother's teachings, would go on to implement many of the policies she had championed. Under his rule, the Yuan dynasty would become a center of cultural and intellectual activity, drawing upon the best traditions of Mongol, Chinese, Persian, and Islamic cultures. The legacy of Sorkhokhtani Beki was not just a political one, it was a cultural one that helped shape the development of the Mongol Empire into one of the most culturally sophisticated empires of its time. Her influence on Mongol society and culture was profound, and her vision for a tolerant, inclusive, and intellectually vibrant empire ensured that the Mongols would not be remembered merely as conquerors, but as creators of a diverse and rich cultural legacy that would endure for centuries. The years following Tolui's death had been filled with intense political maneuvering both within the Mongol royal family and throughout the empire. Sorkhokhtani Beki had been the steady hand that had held the Mongol Empire together during a period of uncertainty. She had ensured that her children, particularly Kublai Khan, were prepared for the challenges ahead while maintaining the empire's stability amidst the shifting allegiances and growing rivalries within the family. But as Kublai Khan's authority began to grow and the political landscape of the Mongol Empire shifted, Sorkhokhtani's role in the empire began to change. The empire, having been unified through Genghis Khan's vision and expanded by Tolui's military successes, was now entering a new phase of its existence, one that would require a different kind of leadership. This was the beginning of the end for Sorkhokhtani's direct influence in the political affairs of the Mongols. By the time Kublai Khan reached adulthood, his military successes and growing popularity made it clear that he was the rightful heir to the Mongol throne. His father's legacy, reinforced by Sorkhokhtani's careful guidance, had set the stage for his eventual rise to power. However, as Kublai's leadership began to take shape, Sorkhokhtani's position within the Mongol court began to diminish. While her role as a mother and advisor had been critical in the earlier years, the political dynamics of the Mongol Empire were changing, and the emergence of Kublai as the future emperor meant that Sorkhokhtani's political influence would naturally wane. Sorkhokhtani had never sought the throne for herself, but her influence had been undeniable. Her power had stemmed from her ability to keep the Mongol military unified, to manage political rivalries, and to ensure the future success of her children. However, with Kublai's growing power and his eventual consolidation of the throne, it became clear that the empire would be better served by the rise of a new leader. The Mongol Empire was vast, and its future required a strong, singular leader who could manage its territories and peoples. For Sorkhokhtani, this was a natural transition. She had always been a mother first, and her primary concern was the well-being and future of her children. Her greatest success lay in her ability to guide Kublai into the role of emperor, ensuring that he was prepared to lead the empire. As Kublai's power grew, however, Sorkhokhtani's influence began to fade. Her role as a regent and advisor to the empire was slowly replaced by Kublai's own vision and the emergence of a new generation of leaders. Despite her diminished political power, Sorkhokhtani's influence was still felt within the Mongol Empire. Her teachings and her approach to governance left an indelible mark on Kublai, who would go on to rule the empire and eventually establish the Yuan dynasty. But while Kublai's reign would mark the beginning of a new chapter for the Mongol Empire, it was also the end of an era, a time when Sorkhokhtani's political savvy, her diplomatic genius, and her steady leadership had been the backbone of Mongol stability. Kublai's rise to power marked a shift in the Mongol Empire's priorities. Under his leadership, the empire would begin to embrace more Chinese traditions, and the focus would shift away from the nomadic, military-driven lifestyle that had characterized the Mongol way of life. Kublai Khan would become the first emperor of the Yuan dynasty, and the Mongol Empire would evolve into a more bureaucratic and culturally diverse entity. For Sorkhokhtani, this transition was bittersweet. She had spent her life preparing Kublai for the challenges of leadership, and now that the moment had arrived, she had to step back and allow her son to take his rightful place. The political intrigue and maneuvering that had marked her earlier years in power were gradually replaced by a more stable, centralized form of governance under Kublai's rule. While Sorkhokhtani's formal political power was waning, she remained an influential figure within the court. Her role as the mother of Kublai Khan and her long-standing relationships with key Mongol leaders ensured that she was respected and revered in Mongol society. Even as Kublai took on more power, Sorkhokhtani continued to act as a trusted advisor, albeit in a more limited capacity. In her later years, Sorkhokhtani shifted her focus from the political affairs of the empire to the welfare of her children and the preservation of the Mongol legacy. Her influence over Kublai remained strong, though it was now more spiritual and advisory than political, as Kublai faced the monumental task of ruling over an empire that spanned 2 continents. Sorkhokhtani's wisdom and guidance would continue to be an invaluable resource. But the future of the empire, along with Kublai's vision for it, was now in his hands. As she watched Kublai begin his reign, Sorkhokhtani could feel the weight of history upon her shoulders. She had given everything for the Mongol Empire and for her children, and now, as Kublai took the throne, she knew that her time was coming to an end. Her legacy, however, would live on through her children and through the policies she had championed. The empire that Genghis Khan had built and that Tolui had expanded was now in Kublai's hands, and it was Sorkhokhtani's teachings that would continue to shape the future of the Mongol world. Her life had been one of quiet power, her influence often behind the scenes but always felt. As the mother of Kublai Khan and a key player in the Mongol court, Sorkhokhtani had ensured the empire's stability during its most fragile years. But now, as the empire entered a new era under Kublai's rule, her direct involvement in its political affairs diminished. Yet, her legacy as a ruler, diplomat, and mother would never be forgotten. In her later years, Sorkhokhtani would retreat from the political sphere, content in the knowledge that her work was done. Her children were secure, and the Mongol Empire was in capable hands. The world would remember her not for the throne she never sought, but for the strength, wisdom, and love she gave to the empire that her husband and son would one day rule. Sorkhokhtani Beki had been a quiet force behind the Mongol Empire's rise to power. Her life, marked by wisdom, patience, and strength, was one of remarkable influence. She was not just a wife, mother, or regent, she was a political architect, a diplomat, and an intellectual. By the time she reached her later years, Sorkhokhtani had seen the empire her husband and father-in-law built expand beyond recognition. She had guided her children, especially Kublai Khan, towards greatness, and her mark on Mongol history would endure for generations. But as with all great leaders, there came a time when Sorkhokhtani's influence began to fade. In the final years of her life, she watched with pride as Kublai Khan prepared to ascend to the throne, realizing that the legacy she had worked so tirelessly to build was in capable hands. Still, the question remained, would the world remember her, and could the empire remain strong without her direct involvement? As Sorkhokhtani grew older, her health began to decline. It was said that she never once faltered in her responsibilities, even in her later years. She had built an empire through sheer will and the careful guidance of her children. But now it seemed the time had come for her to let go. Her passing was mourned not just by her family but by the vast Mongol Empire, which had known her as a guiding light in times of uncertainty. Kublai Khan, now ready to take full control of the empire, was profoundly affected by the death of his mother. Though he had long prepared to rule, the loss of Sorkhokhtani left a void that could not be filled. Her wisdom had shaped his early years, her advice had guided his decisions, and her values had instilled in him the principles that would define his reign. Kublai's grief was deep, not just for the loss of his mother but for the loss of a great advisor and mentor. His first acts as Great Khan would be heavily influenced by her teachings as he sought to carry on her legacy. Sorkhokhtani's influence on Kublai Khan's rule was profound. It was through her that he had learned to balance the Mongol traditions with the need for cultural integration. While her diplomatic role had been essential in keeping the empire united, she also had a vision for its future, a vision that Kublai would take forward. The policies of religious tolerance, the respect for local customs, and the integration of conquered peoples were all reflections of Sorkhokhtani's influence. Kublai would embrace these principles and carry them into his reign, eventually adopting Chinese practices in governance, culture, and administration. The role of women in Mongol society had always been complex, often defined by their relationships to powerful men. But Sorkhokhtani's story stood apart. She was not merely the wife of Tolui or the mother of Kublai, she was a central figure in the empire's rise. One whose influence could not be reduced to her relationships with men. Her leadership was characterized by quiet strength, a deep understanding of governance, and a commitment to ensuring the stability of the Mongol world. While she did not seek power for its own sake, her legacy proved that true power often comes from a different place, a place where diplomacy, strategy, and care for one's people come first. After her passing, Sorkhokhtani's children, Kublai, in particular, would continue to rule in the image of the mother who had shaped their vision of governance. Her legacy was not just in the institutions she helped build or the policies she inspired. It was in the very culture of the Mongol Empire. Under Kublai's reign, the Mongol Empire would experience a transformation that would see it embrace Chinese culture, arts, and governance, culminating in the establishment of the Yuan dynasty. But throughout this transformation, Sorkhokhtani's influence remained an invisible thread connecting the past and the future. The Mongol and the Chinese, the military and the intellectual. Sorkhokhtani's death marked the end of an era for the Mongol Empire. The period of regency, where her leadership had been central to the empire's cohesion, was over. The empire, now under Kublai's rule, would enter a new phase. One that would see the Mongols adopt more sedentary and bureaucratic systems of governance. But Sorkhokhtani's legacy would continue to shape the empire in subtle ways. Her diplomacy, her intelligence, and her careful management of the empire's internal politics were the foundation upon which Kublai would build his own success. In the years that followed, historians and chroniclers began to recognize Sorkhokhtani's contributions to the Mongol Empire. Though she was not a ruler in the traditional sense, her influence was undeniable. Her role as a mother, advisor, and political leader set her apart from many other women of her time, and her legacy as one of the most powerful and influential women in Mongol history became more apparent as the years passed. Her life was a testament to the power of quiet leadership. While many of the great figures of history are remembered for their military conquests or public speeches, Sorkhokhtani's greatness lay in her ability to influence the course of events from behind the scenes. She was not just the mother of Kublai Khan or the wife of Tolui, she was a force in her own right. And while her influence waned as Kublai ascended to the throne, her impact on the Mongol Empire would be felt for generations to come. Her death did not mark the end of her legacy but the beginning of a new chapter for the Mongol Empire. Under Kublai, the empire would reach new heights, conquering China and establishing the Yuan dynasty. Yet even as Kublai's reign ushered in a new era, the lessons that Sorkhokhtani had imparted upon him, of governance, tolerance, and unity would continue to guide the empire. In the end, Sorkhokhtani Beki's legacy was not one of titles or conquests. It was a legacy of wisdom, diplomacy, and the quiet power of a mother who shaped the destiny of an empire and ensured its survival. She remains one of the most significant yet often overlooked figures in Mongol history, a woman whose influence was felt long after her passing. In the empire she helped build and the ruler she helped shape. Sorkhokhtani Beki's story, though often overshadowed by the more visible military triumphs and political machinations of her male counterparts, stands as one of the most profound narratives of influence in Mongol history. As the mother of Kublai Khan, the great Khan who would go on to establish the Yuan dynasty and rule over China, Sorkhokhtani's legacy is deeply woven into the very fabric of the Mongol Empire's success. Her contributions, subtle yet monumental, would shape the trajectory of the empire long after her death. In the years following her passing, the Mongol Empire continued to thrive, but the world it entered was fundamentally different from the one Sorkhokhtani had known. Her son Kublai, having successfully ascended to the throne, shifted the Mongol Empire's focus from its nomadic, war-driven roots to a more centralized, bureaucratic system of governance. The world that Sorkhokhtani had helped to stabilize, through her political alliances, her role as a regent, and her strategic guidance of her children was transformed under Kublai's rule into a new era of integration between Mongol and Chinese cultures. Kublai Khan, deeply influenced by his mother's teachings and political vision, became the first emperor of the Yuan dynasty, ushering in a period of cultural exchange and prosperity. It was during his reign that the Mongols fully embraced elements of Chinese governance, including Confucian principles of governance and administration, which had been part of the lessons Sorkhokhtani had imparted to him. Her advocacy for religious tolerance, cultural integration, and diplomatic pragmatism laid the groundwork for Kublai's success in ruling over both Mongols and Chinese alike. Kublai's leadership was marked by his ability to maintain unity in a sprawling and diverse empire, an achievement that was heavily shaped by his mother's earlier guidance. The empire that Sorkhokhtani had kept united in the years following Tolui's death became an empire that Kublai would expand and stabilize. The principles she instilled in him, compassionate governance, a focus on knowledge and education, and the integration of various cultural practices, were central to his rule. As the Yuan dynasty flourished, Sorkhokhtani's legacy became increasingly visible. While she had never sought power for herself, her impact was felt across generations. She had shown Kublai the importance of governance based on wisdom, not just strength, and the need to foster a diverse, integrated society in which various cultures could coexist under one rule. Her role as a mother, educator, and diplomat would remain a cornerstone of Kublai's reign. Even after the fall of the Mongol Empire, as the Yuan dynasty eventually weakened and fragmented, Sorkhokhtani's legacy continued to influence Chinese governance and Mongol culture. Her vision for a unified empire, a blend of Mongol military strength and Chinese bureaucratic sophistication, left an indelible mark on both Mongol and Chinese history. The policies she promoted, religious tolerance, educational integration, and the importance of strategic diplomacy, continued to echo throughout the centuries, informing the relationship between China and Mongolia in the years to come. But perhaps the most enduring legacy of Sorkhokhtani Beki was the way she transcended the gender norms of her time. As a woman in a patriarchal society, she carved out a space for herself as one of the most powerful figures in the Mongol Empire. Her leadership, although often behind the scenes, was integral to the empire's survival during its most challenging years. She was not simply a passive figurehead, she was an active and strategic participant in the empire's politics, governance, and cultural development. In a world that often overlooked the contributions of women, Sorkhokhtani Beki's legacy defied the norms. She proved that a woman could not only wield power but could shape the destiny of an empire through intelligence, diplomacy, and unwavering dedication to her family and people. Her ability to navigate the treacherous waters of Mongol politics and to prepare her children, especially Kublai, for leadership was a testament to her extraordinary vision and leadership. As the centuries passed, historians and scholars would come to recognize the immense contributions of Sorkhokhtani Beki to the Mongol Empire and the world. Her life, though marked by personal sacrifice and the challenges of ruling in a male-dominated world, was one of profound influence. She was a woman of rare intellect, courage, and strength, a mother who nurtured not just her children but the very future of the Mongol Empire. Today, Sorkhokhtani Beki is remembered as one of the most important and influential figures in Mongol history. Her legacy lives on through the Yuan dynasty, the cultural integration she fostered, and the stability she provided during some of the empire's most uncertain times. She was a woman who, without seeking fame or recognition, left a profound impact on the course of history, shaping the Mongol Empire and ensuring its place in the annals of world history. Her story is a reminder that true power does not always come from conquest or the wielding of force. Sometimes, the most enduring legacies are built through wisdom, compassion, and the quiet influence of those who work behind the scenes. Sorkhokhtani Beki's story is one of resilience, vision, and strength, the story of a woman who helped shape the fate of an empire.